Emma had been living with her dad and her new stepmom, Sarah, for about a year. She was still adjusting to the changes, having someone new in her life, someone who wasn't her mom, but who tried to be there in a way Emma hadn't anticipated. Sarah was kind and patient, but Emma found herself keeping her distance, unsure of how to let her in. One autumn afternoon, Emma came home from school to see Sarah in the back pasture. She was brushing the family's horse, Willow, a beautiful dapple-gray mare they had gotten only a few months earlier. Emma had never been much of an animal person, but something about the scene intrigued her. She walked closer, curious. Sarah was whispering to Willow, her hands moving rhythmically, soothingly over the horse's coat. She seemed totally absorbed, lost in her own world with the gentle creature. Emma hadn't seen her stepmom this unguarded before, and it made her pause. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, almost surprising herself by speaking. Sarah looked up, smiling gently. "Hey, Emma, I'm just giving Willow a little TLC. She's had a bit of a rough day," she replied, as if explaining a friend's moods rather than an animal's. "Rough day?" Emma raised an eyebrow, half joking, half curious. "She's just a horse. What could be bothering her?" Sarah gave a small laugh, but her eyes softened with understanding. "You'd be surprised. Animals have their own feelings and stresses, just like we do. They just don't show it the same way." She paused, giving Willow a gentle pat. "Sometimes it takes a lot of patience to understand them." Emma shifted uncomfortably. Sarah wasn't just talking about Willow. Emma could feel it. Her stepmom's words touched on something deeper, something Emma hadn't allowed herself to consider. She had been keeping her stepmom at arm's length, assuming she wouldn't understand, wouldn't care. "Do you want to try?" Sarah's voice brought Emma back, and she realized Sarah was holding out the brush, offering her a chance. Emma hesitated, then reached out. As she began brushing Willow, her movements were awkward and unsure, but Sarah stood by her side, guiding her hand with a gentle touch, showing her how to be calm and slow, how to listen without words. They stood there, side by side, in comfortable silence. Emma felt a warmth growing inside her, a feeling of peace and understanding she hadn't felt in a long time. As the sun dipped below the trees, she realized that in the quiet presence of her stepmom and the horse, she was beginning to let go of the wall she had built. From that day on, their bond grew slowly, patiently, like Sarah's careful touch on Willow. It wasn't always easy, but they had found a way to connect, through understanding, trust, and the simple act of being there for each other, without needing to say a word. Here's the continuation of Emma and Sarah's story. Over the following weeks, Emma found herself drawn more often to the back pasture.
2023 में भी यदि आप 10 राउंड्स में जैकपॉट नहीं जीत
Willow had become a shared space between her and Sarah, a quiet place where words weren't needed. It felt like the one place where Emma's thoughts could breathe without being questioned or interrupted, and while she still kept a bit of distance, she knew that something was changing. One weekend, Sarah asked Emma if she'd like to join her on an early morning trail ride. Emma hesitated, but ultimately agreed, curious and a little excited, though she didn't show it. They rode side by side through the misty woods, the trees just beginning to change colors. The air was filled with a crispness, a sense of calm. For a while, they rode in silence, the only sounds being the soft thuds of the horse's hooves and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Then, unexpectedly, Sarah spoke. "You know, Emma, when I was your age, I felt pretty alone. My parents divorced, and I bounced between homes. I didn't really talk to anyone about it," she said, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. Emma looked at her, surprised. Sarah had never mentioned her past like this, and she hadn't expected her to open up. "Really?" she asked quietly, not knowing what else to say. Sarah nodded. "I guess I just want you to know that if you ever feel alone or like you need someone to talk to, I'm here. You don't have to tell me everything. Just know that I'm here." Emma was silent, digesting her words. She thought about the time she'd felt like she was carrying her feelings alone, wondering if anyone would understand. Here was Sarah, someone she had always seen as a stranger, yet she seemed to understand Emma in ways she hadn't expected. As they reached a small clearing by a stream, they stopped, letting the horses rest. Sarah sat on a nearby log looking out at the water, and Emma joined her. After a long pause, Emma finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes I feel like everyone else just moves on, like I'm stuck in the past, missing things that aren't here anymore." Her words felt raw, unguarded, and vulnerable. Sarah didn't press her. She simply placed a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. "That's okay, Emma. You don't have to be ready to move on all at once. Healing takes time, and there's no rush. We're all allowed to carry our memories and our feelings." Emma felt a weight lift, a feeling she hadn't been able to name until now. She realized that Sarah's presence wasn't here to replace anything or anyone, but to support her. On the ride back, Emma noticed the sun breaking through the clouds, casting a warm light over the trees and their path. She felt lighter, freer, like she had taken a small step forward in her own way. Here's the next chapter of Emma and Sarah's journey as their relationship continues to grow and change. As the months passed, Emma's bond with Sarah grew in small but meaningful ways. They didn't need dramatic conversations or declarations. It was in the little things. Emma noticed herself laughing more around Sarah, and they often shared small, knowing glances when they were around her dad, who had a knack for telling goofy jokes. Their understanding didn't need words, and that made it feel special. One cold winter day, Emma came home from school to find Sarah sitting by the fireplace, a stack of old family photo albums beside her. Emma hadn't looked through those albums in ages. They were filled with memories of her mom, of moments she'd quietly held on to. She froze, wondering why Sarah would have taken them out. "Hey, Emma," Sarah said softly, noticing her. "I was cleaning the shelves and found these. I hope you don't mind. I thought maybe you'd like to look through them with me." Her tone was gentle, cautious. Emma could tell she didn't want to intrude. Emma felt a flicker of resistance rise up in her chest, but she also sensed Sarah's sincerity. She nodded slowly, settling down next to her stepmom, unsure of how this would go. Together, they opened the first album, and Emma felt a flood of memories. There were pictures of her mom, her dad, and her as a little girl, all laughing together. Sarah sat quietly beside her, respectful and patient. Emma felt the warmth of Sarah's presence, but was grateful for her silence. At one point, Sarah quietly spoke up. "She has a beautiful smile," she said, looking at a picture of Emma's mom. Emma glanced at her, surprised by the comment. No one had really spoken to her about her mom in a long time, as if they were all afraid it would hurt her. But here was Sarah, openly admiring her mom, acknowledging her importance. Emma felt a pang of gratitude. "She did," Emma whispered, her voice soft. "She was kind of like you, patient, always knew what to say to make things better." Sarah smiled, touched by the comparison. "Thank you, Emma. That means a lot," she said, her voice filled with genuine warmth. She reached out and gave Emma's hand a gentle squeeze. They spent the next hour going through photos together, laughing at some, pausing to reflect at others. By the end, Emma felt as if a piece of her heart that had been locked away was now finally being shared. She realized that Sarah wasn't trying to take her mom's place. She was simply there, ready to be a part of Emma's life in whatever way Emma would allow. Later that evening, as they were putting the albums back on the shelf, Emma looked up at Sarah. "Thank you for being patient with me," she said quietly. Sarah smiled, her eyes kind. "I'll always be here, Emma. I'm grateful for every moment we share, even the little ones." And in that moment, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of family, of belonging, not defined by roles or labels, but by the trust they were building, one gentle moment at a time. Here's the next part of Emma and Sarah's journey as they continue to navigate family, trust, and growth. As spring approached, the family decided to take a weekend trip to a nearby lake. Emma's dad had found a cozy cabin, perfect for a quiet getaway, nestled among towering pines and overlooking sparkling blue water. Although Emma loved the idea of a peaceful weekend, she was a bit hesitant about spending it with her dad and Sarah. She wondered if things would feel forced now that they were all under one roof for a few days with no distractions.
Yes guys, so ngayon dumating na po yung ating Gcash. So
She
nakikita
felt her worries ease. The cabin was beautiful, and the lake shimmered in the sunlight, inviting and calm. She noticed that Sarah had packed a few things she thought Emma might enjoy, some books Emma had mentioned, her favorite snacks, and even a set of paints and sketchbooks, as Sarah knew she liked to draw sometimes. That first evening, as they sat by the lake, Emma took out the sketchbook and began to draw the scene in front of her, the calm water, the tall trees swaying gently in the breeze. Sarah sat nearby, quietly reading. Emma felt a rare sense of calm, a peace that came from simply being. The next morning, Sarah suggested they go canoeing. Emma's dad laughed, shaking his head. "I'll leave this one to you two," he said. "I'll stick to fishing on dry land." Emma couldn't help but smile. She knew her dad's balance wasn't exactly the best. Sarah and Emma took the canoe out onto the lake, and Emma was surprised to find she was actually enjoying herself. The rhythm of the paddles, the quiet sounds of nature, the feeling of being surrounded by open water, it was calming. Sarah guided them out to the middle of the lake, where they drifted peacefully for a while, soaking in the morning light. After a few minutes, Sarah turned to Emma, a gentle smile on her face. "I know it's not always easy, Emma," she said softly. "Blending families, finding where we all fit. I just want you to know that you don't have to feel rushed or pressured. I'm here whenever you're ready." Emma felt the sincerity in Sarah's words, and it touched her in a way she hadn't expected. She realized that Sarah wasn't asking her to be someone she wasn't, or to feel things she wasn't ready to feel. Sarah was simply there, open and willing to be a part of Emma's life, no matter what that looked like. Without thinking too much, Emma surprised herself by leaning over and giving Sarah a quick hug. "Thank you, Sarah," she said, her voice quiet but sincere, "for everything. I don't think I've said that enough." Sarah's face softened, and she hugged her back. "You don't have to thank me, Emma. Just having you in my life is enough." For the rest of the weekend, Emma felt a new lightness between them. She found herself opening up more, sharing stories and moments she hadn't shared before. They spent time fishing with her dad, laughing at his attempts to catch fish, and mostly just catching sticks. They cooked together, shared meals, and sat by the fireplace telling stories late into the night. As they packed up to leave, Emma felt a pang of sadness. She realized that somewhere over the weekend, this cabin, this lake, and even this new family of hers had started to feel like home. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace,